The moment Armin Valur closed his eyes on the velvet couch, the house seemed to hold its breath, and so did his heart, because this was not sleep. It was a test that would change everything he thought he knew about power, kindness, and the quiet courage of a shy soul. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Because stories like this deserve to be felt together. Armin Valur was the kind of man whose name opened doors before he even reached them. As the CEO of a global logistics empire, he lived in boardrooms of glass and steel, surrounded by people who smiled too quickly and spoke too carefully. Wealth had taught him efficiency, control, and caution, but it had also left him uncertain about something simple and human: sincerity. That doubt followed him home to his sunlit estate, a place of polished wood, tall windows, and carefully scheduled silence. The staff moved like shadows, professional and distant, except for one presence that always seemed smaller than the room she cleaned. Her name was Mireia Solis, a shy maid with downcast eyes and hands that trembled when she thought no one was looking. She spoke little, worked diligently, and carried herself as if the world might break if she took up too much space. Armin noticed things most people missed. He noticed how Mireia paused before entering a room, as if asking permission from the air. He noticed how she straightened picture frames that were already straight, how she folded discarded notes with care before throwing them away. He noticed, too, how money changed people. Rumors had reached him that some staff borrowed small amounts, took advantage when they thought they could. Doubt, once planted, grew quickly in a man used to risk assessments. One afternoon, with sunlight pouring in the estate glowing in warm gold, Armin decided to test a theory he already hated himself for having. He left a thick envelope of cash on the library table, placed deliberately beside a heavy book, then stretched out on the couch where the light made it look like a perfect place to nap. He slowed his breathing, let his body soften, and pretended to sleep. Time passed differently with eyes closed. He heard footsteps, light and hesitant. He sensed the room change as Mireia entered, the air filled with the faint scent of soap and clean linen. Armin expected the rustle of paper, the telltale pause of temptation. Instead, there was silence, the kind that feels like someone thinking carefully. Through the slits of his lashes, he saw her freeze at the sight of the envelope. Her shoulders stiffened, and she stepped back as if the money might burn her. For a moment, Armin's chest tightened with the old cynicism, the belief that everyone eventually chose themselves. But then something unexpected happened, something that made his pulse stutter. Mireia moved closer, not to take, but to cover. She slid the envelope beneath the book, aligning it neatly so it wouldn't fall, as if protecting it from curious eyes. She glanced at Armin on the couch, her expression a mix of concern and resolve. Believing him asleep, she adjusted the curtain to soften the glare on his face. Then, with hands that still trembled, she pulled a small folded note from her pocket. It was worn, creased from being carried too long. She placed it beside the book, hesitated, then tucked it halfway under, as if unsure she deserved to be heard. The note explained, in careful handwriting, that she had once found money left behind in another job and had been blamed for it. She wrote that she would never touch what wasn't hers, and that if he had misplaced the envelope, she wanted him to know it was safe. Armin felt something cold and sharp in his chest as shame rushed in. He had measured her with suspicion, and she had answered with integrity, but she wasn't finished. Mireia noticed the framed photograph on the side table, a picture of Armin's parents taken years ago. Dust had settled on the glass. She cleaned it gently, then straightened it so the faces caught the light. There was tenderness in the motion, a quiet respect for a life that wasn't hers. When she finished, she didn't linger. She left the room as quietly as she had entered, leaving behind order, honesty, and a note that weighed more than any sum of cash. When Armin finally opened his eyes, the sunlight felt different. He sat up slowly, picked up the note, and read it twice. The room no longer looked like a stage for a test. It looked like a place where he had failed one. He realized then how heavy his world had become with doubt, and how light it felt when someone chose goodness without being seen. That afternoon, he called for a review of staff wages and schedules. He learned Mireia worked 2 jobs, sending money home, rarely asking for help. He learned she dreamed of studying nursing, but believed dreams were luxuries meant for other people. Days passed, bright and ordinary, but something fundamental had shifted. Armin began to greet his staff by name, to listen more than he spoke. He arranged for scholarships through a company foundation, quietly at first, making sure dignity came before charity. Mireia received a letter one morning, sealed and official, offering full support for her studies, flexible hours, and a raise that acknowledged her value. There was no mention of the test, no apology spoken aloud, only a handwritten line at the bottom that said he believed in her honesty and hoped she would believe in herself. The house changed, not in its furniture or walls, but in its atmosphere. Sunlight still filled the rooms, but now laughter sometimes did too. Mireia walked with steadier steps, her eyes lifting more often. Armin found that success tasted sweeter when shared, that trust rebuilt something money never could. He kept the note in his desk, a reminder that power meant nothing without humility, and that the bravest acts were often the quietest. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of goodness, and let us know how it made you feel. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive on Midnight Tales. Before the ending, a special request. Please comment the word kindness below if you believe small, honest actions can change lives. On a bright afternoon much like the first, Armin passed the library and saw the book and table just as they had been, sunlit and calm. He smiled, not because he had tested and won, but because he had been tested and learned. And in that quiet house, kindness had finally found a place to rest.